We will call our special called session to order. Roll call, please.
Chairman McClendon.
Here.
Vice Chair Robinson.
Here.
Mrs. Hill.
Here.
Mrs. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Perez.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mrs. Thurman. Here. Mr. Walker.
Here.
Mr. Wingate.
Here.
Mr. Macon. Superintendent Dr. Robertson.
Here. Okay, that will bring us to our item on the agenda, the budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. Dr. Robertson or Mary Ellen?
So we provided just an update on revenues. You'll have this sheet in front of you that shows updated revenues and then some considerations at the bottom. The increase in revenue is coming from the updated BEP that we had, and then also an updated projection of sales tax from the county, which adds up to $7.531 million. What we did is kind of took from conversations that we've had in previous board meetings and things that we've heard from you, kind of some recommended expenditures, and then on the right side, some alternate expenditures for you to consider in the conversation. Mary Ellen, anything to add to that?
No. So we did get the BEP estimate from the state, and so it was always glad that it's when I'd rather be under and have more money come in. So we were, some of the share, the local share percentage was a little bit different, and a few other factors. And then we worked with the county talking about sales tax projections to make sure that that was in line with what they would expect.
Any questions, discussions? Ms. Hill.
Thank you all very much for this additional work that you've done. I was quite excited by the suggestions in the overall on this new document, but this left-hand column, it looks to me like this adds up to the total of the additional revenue. Okay. I would like to make a motion that we vote on the budget as provided in our budget book, with the addition of these additional expenditures, being a 1% increase to certified scale, which is on top of the 2% increase in STEP, additional funds to implement a competitive classified salary scale, which combines the 2% raise and STEP, and a $15 minimum in the proposed budget, differentiated compensation priorities with a spend of $1.2 million. And the one I'm most excited about, expanding the clinic and generic prescription coverage to all non-covered employees, which to me is a game changer for a lot of people. And then the additional $250 for accelerating student achievement, and our charter schools payment of $515,517.
You made a motion.
I made a motion.
Do I have a second? Okay. Any discussion? Miss.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Mr. Perez.
Okay.
Is that a question?
Ms. Robinson.
Okay. First, I want to say thank you so much for the hard work that you guys have put into this budget, especially hearing us on pausing the budget process and just giving us giving everyone a moment to think or to realize what was going to come through. And I feel like you guys heard us loud and clear on the possibilities with the overage, so I'm really excited. I did wonder, with the left-hand column or the left-hand list, additional funds to implement competitive classified salary scale. I just wondered, can you give us some more specifics on what that would actually break down to hourly for the various positions, if you know that?
Sure. So for the main ones that we've been discussing, so to kind of take us back a little bit, back in 18-19, our classified staff was down around the $10 an hour range. So, we've moved them up to 12, we've moved them up to 13. This new one would look at our educational assistants and move them up above 15. So that would actually take them, if you look at our educational assistants and our clerical assistants, the starting rate would be $15.64.
Okay.
Yeah. It also adjusts many of our office personnel as well. So if you look at our attendance clerks, our clericals, and many of the other positions of that nature. It also looks at adjusting a lot of our structures to make it more competitive. I think we would start, Mary Ellen and I have talked about this, and we talked about it again this afternoon, with these entry-level positions first to make sure that we have entry-level competitive salaries, and then slow walk over the next year, moving potentially to a 15 step scale versus a 25. So we have broader ranges and more flexibility within that pay scale as well.
Okay. What about cafeteria workers?
Yes, so that would also look at moving cafeteria workers. And I'll let Mary Ellen speak to that since they are self-funded.
So currently that's not in the proposed budget, and what we were going to do was come in at the start of the year and look at that and go through their budgets and look, and we do have. Sorry. Yeah, so that's not in, because since this is just GP, the changes, but we would look at doing that for school-age childcare and school nutrition. We're just going to work through that, so a separate process at the start of the year.
Okay, what are you thinking on that process? I think last month's agenda meeting, we talked about this in depth, and, you know, we even talked about maybe outsourcing cafeteria duties to a vendor, and maybe that would be the way to create more competitive pay. I just am curious, like, what is your thought at this point on what that looks like, how we get there? Because I don't want to get excited about this budget and then not feel like there's a real path to how we help those that are, I think, are on actually like the lower end, which is the cafeteria workers and our SACC employees.
Yeah, so in terms of outsourcing, that's going to be that's going to be a long-term conversation,
Sure.
something
Yeah.
that we're going to have to engage in this summer and the fall, and it would not be for this
This
next
upcoming
fiscal
school year.
year. It would be for the following fiscal year. Again, if you'll recall back to the conversation about cafeterias, right now the proposed budget has them at $13 an hour. We talked about, since it's self-funded, it is allowable for GP to, at the end of the year, if we wanted to up their pay to $14 or $15 an hour, knowing that it's going to be very tight, that GP could come back and cover the overage for those self-funded programs. And we, again, right now have already moved them up to starting at 13. I think it's reasonable to say, yes, let's try $14 or $15 an hour. We just need to know that at the end of the year, we may have to cover that overage.
Okay, so where does that live in this budget?
That's
It doesn't.
self-funded, so it's not
Right.
in the GP budget.
All right, so, so the way I understand it is you basically mean like we'll borrow money from GP, and I say borrow like very loosely, but basically you're just gonna move funds from general budget over to the self-funded budget, right?
Right.
Okay, right, so then where does that live, or where could it live in this budget? Because if we're gonna do it, like, let's make a commitment to doing this.
So, a couple of ways we could do it. We talked about at the end of the year or throughout the year, school nutrition puts in it's a little over $800,000 a year for utilities.
That's right. You were talking about, like,
and so we could
reducing
talk
that.
about
Yeah.
basically crediting that back to school nutrition, which could cover a large portion of it. We could utilize fund balance because it would be a one-time dollar figure at the end of it. And again, we'll have some savings here and there that we could address it. I think what we need to do is when we get to that point of school nutrition is talking about, what does $1 more look like? What does $2 more look like? And then that gives you guys a better idea of, what the end cost may be. But again, that, self-funded is a different budget.
So then if that's the solution for cafeteria, what's the solution for SACC? If we want to increase those
Yeah,
positions?
it's the same thing, but again,
Okay.
SACC, I'm trying to remember what we brought it back up to, but we just recently increased those wages, and I'll try to bring that back on an old agenda to see what we put it up to, but we brought that, I think, in February.
It's January, they went to 13.
Went to 13, but it moved up. Again, the $13 an hour are like part-time college students. They're not our
Right.
full-time.
Yeah. So, I think the whole point of this discussion and like why we really push this is for strategy reasons. It's not really like just to spend money, right? Or oh, we got this extra money, let's just go spend it. No, it's for the strategic purpose of finding and retaining people. And so and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm under the impression that our cafeteria workers, that we can't find any. Like, am I wrong? Have we had like a bunch of resumes come in and now we've hired a bunch of people, or do we continue to have open gaps? Okay. I would really like to push this board and the administration to, I mean, let's move on that now. Like, what are we waiting on? What are we waiting for?
We're not waiting. We're planning on doing it. It's a separate conversation from this budget. I mean, we plan on bringing it. It's just a question of, do we want to go to 14 or do we want to go to 15? But that is that's still part of the conversation that we're having. School nutrition just is not in the GP budget.
Well, but I would think that we need to, in this budget, say that we're going to relieve that 800,000, or we don't need to do that. We don't need to go ahead and make that change in the budget.
And as we get into the year, like if we get to February and we see we're going to be, we're going to predict that we're $400,000 over, what school nutrition has, then that's where that conversation can come up.
So this means we would not be able to give a raise to this, to cafeteria employees now. Like, this would have to be a delayed.
So that when they start in August, I mean, we still have June and July that we can bring back and say, we're going to go ahead and start cafeteria workers at $15 an hour. What I'm saying is that as we go through the year, we're just going to have to watch that and plan out. When we get to December, we'll have basically 4 months of wages that we can then predict and say, it looks like we're going to be X number over, and here's how we can deal with it. We still have a plan in this budget, whether it's through the energy cost or savings, that we could address it.
Okay, so that means that we could start posting jobs at a higher rate on job boards now, or we have to wait?
Well, we're still in this current fiscal year.
Okay, so for the next fiscal year, when we
Right.
start hiring for those positions? Today, right? So all your job postings right now say $13 an hour?
Well, for school nutrition, we're hiring and recruiting for school-based positions right now, but school nutrition often won't start to hire for necessarily the next school year until kind of the summer, or they'll lose candidates if they're not working over the summer. They're hiring for right this moment, so, yes.
Okay. All right.
Maybe I'm not explaining that well, but and that's part of our conversation.
Okay, I think I understand. I'm probably just not getting the result that I want right now, and I'm an impatient person, so that's probably actually part of it. So, and then I was curious, like, with accelerating student achievement, the 250,000, and charter schools, the 515, 517.
I know what that is.
We already had that in the budget, correct? Or this is an increase? I think I don't know what.
It's an increase, so
It's just an adjustment.
Yeah.
I got it. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Perez.
So as well, thank you for the clarification. I'm also excited about the expansion of the clinic for all non-covered employees. I'm just gonna kind of put a little alarm out there because unfortunately I can never just be happy. And so my alarm is this: that is not sufficient coverage for an employee in the event of a crisis, right? It's just very basic. So in my brain, honestly at the moment, because I'm one of the people who wondered if that was a possibility, my concern would be to watch if employees drop out of emergency coverage who had emergency coverage, thinking that this will be sufficient, because we may want to revisit the possibility of at least providing some base coverage for all employees that would cover in an emergency, because then it might be worse. If there's but I think it's great for now. I just want to be aware that if we start losing people from emergency coverage who may have just gotten the most basic, they may find themselves really uncovered in a health emergency, and we unintentionally created. And the reason is very logical, obviously, which is when we looked at the numbers with a take-home pay of $617 versus $380, many people don't have a choice but to drop coverage and do that. So this may give the sense of safety where there isn't really the safety we want. Which goes to the second point. There's a movement I want to start. I want to see how popular I am, which is the movement to talk about take-home pay after the cost of working. And when we think about a person getting $380 or $617, and to get to work and back home, and to pay for some materials for work, and so on and so forth. I think with Ms. Murray, I started tracking my wife, who's a teacher. I disclose that every board meeting. Been tracking all expenses on school-related supplies, and it is amazing how much is spent to actually do the work professionally that teachers need to do, and classified staff as well. So I just kind of, to Mrs. Robinson's point, I think this is a step 2. It is, and I appreciate it and thank you. I still think we have many steps ahead of us because what we're encountering is true difficulty hiring people, because it is, by the way, and I'll say this publicly, the logical decision for some people who would end up coming home with $380 after 2 weeks, minus $50 a week of gas costs, minus childcare, minus this. Actually, the smartest move is to consider staying home and caring for your kids. And so if we want, and these are people who would want to work and care to work and love to work, but they're making the smartest financial decision at that rate. So that's why I want to start that movement of low take-home pay, because we have to be realistic. So in all that, we've added, thank you, $2 to that 380. It's $150 if we deducted nothing from that. So I did bad math the other day and somebody called me on it. So $530 take-home pay after 2 weeks. We noted, and this is just a public statement, but we noted just recently in the news that cost of housing has increased in Chattanooga over the last couple of years significantly, that 75% of our children are living in poverty, and that homelessness has increased by 300%, 200% more or less in our area. So all that to say, I don't want us down the road as Hamilton County to be contributors to that. I'm thankful that we have some hope in the horizon. So that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Walker.
Just to be clear, since my first budget and last one, I guess, for the near future, just simple yes or no, and maybe you can help me explain the additional sales tax estimate of 2.8 million. We're not going to the county and asking them for 2.8 million more. We're still just presenting our balanced budget as we did. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Thurman.
Yes. Penny, I guess this is for you. The new salary scale, that's, I'm sure that's what you're reading off of now. And did we take into consideration, like we said, that some people were being hired on making as much money as ones who were currently working? Did we fix that in the salary scale?
Yes, ma'am. So when the comp analyst looked at our study for us and kind of priced it out for Mary Ellen, he took into consideration where folks currently are and where they needed to move to so that we could eliminate pay compression.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'll take this time. Like Marco, I want to start a movement that we actually do something about our infrastructure. You should have a document in front of you that has the Blueprint 2030 logo on it, that has each of our districts and the 2 new districts on it. I've been on this board now almost 4 years, and this will be my last budget as I roll off. And we have put hardly any new money into our maintenance budget. We took our staff out of it and put that into general fund, and of course allowed that money to go to our facilities. Y'all have all heard me up here say we have a facilities crisis. It was, I guess, 2020, right before the pandemic, I think the month before the pandemic hit, that we had MGT roll out their report, and we had over $1 billion in deferred maintenance. $1 billion in deferred maintenance, and we spend $3 million a year on our maintenance budget. We have 7.5 million square feet. We can do the math. It's not a lot. And just for the public that's here and watching online, I think there's about 20 slides in here, and these are from all over the county, not just my district. I think every district has at least one school on here represented, and I'll try to go through these. I didn't get a chance to label them. But these are what our schools look like. To this day, we had 44,000 students in our buildings today that look like this. That's a playground. That's a classroom. That's a classroom window. That's a classroom. That's a classroom. That's an athletic trainer room. That's a bathroom with plywood doors. Bathroom with what I consider a gel sink and plywood. You can't see the plywood doors on there. That same bathroom, another plywood door, paint peeling off, portable, a portable. I don't even know what that is. More paint, a portable, tile coming off the wall, exposed HVAC in a classroom, more tile, more paint and water damage, and that's it. I don't know how we as a board and we as a school system move forward or have any real conversation for Blueprint 2030 and this $1 billion of deferred maintenance until we address our facilities and how much we spend a year. We can't. We cannot have that conversation. Dr. Robertson and Dr. Sharp cannot have that conversation about how do we start building new schools like we're doing with Tyner and CSLA, but do that across the county until we actually can maintain our schools. We can't maintain our schools. You can see it by those pictures, and there's 100 more I could have done, but I knew y'all would get mad if I just kept going through picture and picture and picture. We all have seen it in our buildings. This is one of those issues. There's 11 districts on this paper. There's 9 of us up here. Every single one of us has at least one, probably 2. Some of us have 3, 4, 5, 6 schools that need some kind of major renovation, some major athletic upgrade, something. So when we have kids go in there and they want to learn, they're not ashamed of their building. Because if I went into those buildings, and I went to Ooltewah High School, Ooltewah Middle, and then the old East Brainerd Elementary, I don't know how you get excited to learn. I don't know how you can't look and say, well, if they don't care about my school building because there's paint falling off the wall and there's water coming off the ceiling and it's missing ceiling tiles and my portable is sinking into the ground, how can I learn? And honestly, when I look at this, where we have the 2 considerations, and I think everyone said that the $7.5 million we have there, that first recommended column, that left column, is great in what we need to do. But we cannot continue as a district to rob Paul to pay Peter, or whatever. Yeah, I knew I was going to mess that up.
Both end up robbed.
Yeah, they both end up robbed. We can't continue to do that. I mean, at some point, we as a district, we as a school board, future school boards have to be good stewards of our buildings. And we haven't been for 2 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, 5 decades. Some of the buildings haven't seen more than $1 million put in them since probably 1960. And it's absurd and it's sad to live in such a beautiful place like we do. And you walk into Barger Elementary, you walk into Soddy Daisy Middle, you walk into CSAS or CSLA and Tyner, and I know they're getting brand new schools, and I couldn't be more happy. But we as a county, I have a hard time knowing that we send kids to school every single day into those buildings. And honestly, people love and love and love and love and love, and we just saw it to say they support public education. Well, folks, you can't have public education if you don't have schools. And it has been, I've not devoted anything probably over the last 3.5 years more than to facilities, to Dr. Robertson's. I've been a pain to him, but it's a place that this district has overlooked for years, and we have to correct it. And it's going to take money. It's going to. If that was my house in this picture, it would take money to go fix it. And if we had reoccurring revenue more than $3 million a year, look what we could accomplish on here, on this thing. I mean, Allen Elementary renovation, Daisy Elementary renovation, the Signal Mountain Road project that has been talked about since I've been on here, Big Ridge Elementary renovation, Loftus Middle School renovation, Bestie Shepherd renovation, CSAS athletic upgrade, Orchard Knob Elementary renovation, Appison Elementary renovation, Eastridge Middle renovation, Wolf Teva Creek Elementary renovation, Eastlake Academy renovation, Eastlake Elementary renovation, Lookout Valley Elementary School renovation. We could do that if this county wanted to invest. And that's the question. Do we want to invest, or do we want to send our kids to schools like the 20 pictures I just showed? I am, Scott, you'll have to help me out with this, going to make a substitute motion. Would that be correct? I'm going to make a substitute motion to keep everything Ms. Hills did, but to do an additional ask to the county government of $10 million directly to our maintenance budget. That would be reoccurring revenue every year for our maintenance budget. That would put it at $13 million. And everything on this list would be accomplished in 4 years. And this is just an example that Dr. Robertson and his team put together. It's not, of course, 100%. Whatever it may be of this board, I'm fine with it. But I'm tired of the rhetoric of we need to do something. Let's do something. Let's stop kicking the can down the road, because it's been kicked, y'all. It has been kicked. We get there for $1 billion worth of stuff that's been kicked down the road. So let's do it. It's budget season. We can vote it yes, we can say no. The county commission can say yes, they can say no. But I won't leave this board without saying I didn't try to make this county in a better position than I left it with facilities. The general public, some of board members, some teachers, parents, they see their school, and if they go to East Brainerd Elementary or East Hamilton or Signal or these schools that have been fortunate enough to get it, they don't see what some kids go to school every day in, and they don't see what our teachers work in, because if those were my classrooms, I wouldn't show up. I wouldn't think I was supported by this district if I came into a classroom where there's water dripping and I have 6 to 7 missing ceiling tiles and there's light fixtures off and paint's peeling. I mean, it just doesn't, that's not what we should have as a standard across this county. So I'm going to make that motion. Hope I can get a second. But it's time that we actually do something for this county and for our schools. I think my conversations I've had with people as I've kind of talked about this is, well, it's not the right time. You should try it later. You should try it. The new board should do it. I've been told 4 years it's not the right time. I've been told for 4 years, and this county's been told for 20 years it's not the right time. Well, I guess there's never going to be a right time. So let's make right now the right time. Let's invest in our schools. Let's set the foundation for our new superintendent, our new chief operations officer. We're going to have a new mayor. We're going to have a new commission, a new school board. And we can say as this board, we set the foundation for a new time in Hamilton County where we took our facilities seriously.
Mr. Chairman, for clarification, is it your preference for this to be a substitute motion, or would you like to amend Ms. Hill's main motion? And either way works.
We can amend it. We'll do an amended motion just because I'm keeping hers the same, and then if it fails, we can go back to yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Ms. Thurman.
Yes. How much additional money are we getting from the county this year? Which one of these? Exactly how much more this year than the? 2 million. Okay, we got 2.8 million more. That's just from what we had thought we were going to get, right? That's in addition to what we thought we were going to get. I'm talking about from last year.
Yeah, the 23 budget is 12.3 more. With this amendment that we've brought forth, will be 12.3 more than the 22 adopted budget.
12.3 more.
That's primarily sales tax growth, and
Okay.
then the just 2% in property tax growth.
Okay, how much more are we getting from the state than we did last year?
$9.9 million.
More. We did. Okay, that's going to be the argument from the county commission that we're getting that much additional money. Why couldn't we put some more of that into maintenance? I'm sure that's going to be their question. I was on the board when, it was back when Curtis Adams and Harold Coker were on the board, because I remember that discussion very well between them when they gave us, I think it was, we just had like $2 million in our maintenance budget at that time. Of course, that's been a long time ago. It's probably been not quite 20 years ago, but probably 17 years ago. And they gave us additional money to be put in maintenance to be used for nothing but maintenance. And they brought it up to $4 million a year 17 years ago, or 16 years ago, whatever it was. And at one time, when we needed money, we gutted that fund. That's why we put it back down to 3, and then we bumped it back up to 4. So I'll just be very honest with you, it's going to be a hard sell for the county commission because they just don't trust us. Because at that time, they wanted us to sign some kind of was it a resolution? They wanted us to sign something that's what that money would be used for. And they said, no, it would just be done on a gentleman's agreement. We didn't have to sign anything and didn't have to write it in blood or anything, that it was a gentleman's agreement. Well, that gentleman's agreement didn't work out very well because we spent the money out there, because when times got tight, they knew that's usually the thing that gets parents upset. It's always called the bees, whether it's ball, buses, buildings, or something, you know. That's what we always threaten to cut when it comes time, and they know that usually makes parents squeal. So I just don't know that this is a good sell. They're probably going to ask us, why haven't you all put more money in there? You've been getting all this extra money. Why haven't you been putting money? Like have tried so many times, every budget I think we've ever worked on, said, we need to put more money into our maintenance fund. And every time we get any extra money at all, I want to put it in the maintenance fund. And this is exactly why. And I'm sure that's why they're going to ask us that. I would rather do it on a basis of, if we really need something, go to them and see. I just don't think it's going to fly with them, like they say, especially now. We have a lot of people out of work. Gas, grocery, everything is so high right now. And you start talking about a tax increase, it's going to be ugly in a hurry, and you'll never get anything. I just think it's time that we do our due diligence on our part. Every time we approve a position on this board, we don't just approve the cost of the position, the salary of the position. They always have to have some kind of support system around them, whether it's a secretary or something. We don't figure all of that into the cost of hiring these new people. And we have hired, and people can tell me that we've cut the central office, and I'm gonna call BS on that all day long. I went back and looked at my 2012, 2015, 2017 organizational charts, and I'm just telling you, there's a lot of people not figured in there that has caused the central office to explode, and the county commissioners are not stupid. And so I think it's time that this board, that we really, like we say, we've tightened our belt. I know better. I've always heard they've said you couldn't find fat on a pig farm, and I think that's just about where we are sometimes. I mean, I see these buildings. I've been looking at Saudi Daisy Middle School forever. I don't know when any money's going to be available from the county. I don't know when our bonds are up. We're not ever kept up to date on that. I used to be kept up to date on that all the time by when Fred Skillern was county commissioner. He used to let me know when every bond was coming due and how much money would be available. And he said, you know, Rhonda, if y'all need something, this is when you need to ask for it, because these bonds are coming available. We don't know any of that information anymore. I don't hear it from my commissioner. I don't know if anybody hears it from their commissioner. But there are things like that that are very important for this board to know when money's going to be available, because I think that at one time, and there again, it was just a gentleman's agreement, that when bonds were paid off that they had borrowed for schools, that money, when those bonds were renewed, it was going to come back to the school so we could use it for more building, instead of the county taking it and doing something else with it. I don't know where we are on that. That's the conversation I would like to have with the commissioners.
Yeah.
Instead of going back to the taxpayers, have a conversation with them. When are our bonds going to be paid off for the schools that we have already built? And you know, how much of it can we spend? How much of it are we going to be able to renew it and redo more schools? And then we can figure out where we can go from there. I just don't think it's going to sell. It won't get my vote for that reason, because I don't think that we've really done our due diligence. We continue to hire, we continue to do what we want, and then go back and say, we don't have money. There's a lot of opportunities we've had to put money into our capital maintenance, and we've chose to do other things with it. And like I say, I sure would like to see these things, and I know we need a Saudi Daisy Middle School as bad as we need anything. It's snake season again, so I'm sure I'll be hearing about that before long. But you know, I sure want to see some of these buildings, but this isn't going to help any of that either. A lot of this stuff I would like to see. I see a lot of these things around my district, which is great. But like I say, I think they're just going to come back to us and say, you've gotten all this additional money from the state, you've gotten all this additional money from the county. Why don't you use some of that money for your maintenance? I'm afraid that's going to be the argument.
And I'll respond to that. Anyone that thinks we can bond our way out of this problem, it's the reason we're in this problem.
Well, no, I'm talking about for new schools, Tucker. That's what I'm talking about.
I know, that's what I'm saying, is for new schools, but we have a lot of other things that, I mean, to bond, money is not going to happen.
Well,
and we just
well,
bonded.
I'm just talking about for and I understand, like I said, I'm talking about putting money into the budget for our maintenance budget. We've had plenty of opportunities to do some of that, put $1 million from here. If we'd have done $1 million a year since been on this board, I mean, I'd be better than $17 million right there. And we haven't done, and we're staying at status quo. We're at exactly the same it was when I got on this board. We're at $4 million. That's where it was 17 years ago. That's where it was. That's where it is now. And that's on nobody but us. And you know, I'm just saying that the county commission is going to say how much extra money they've given us. They might go for it. They may not. I don't know.
So my question would be, what do we cut right here? Because they're giving their employees a 3% raise. County employees are getting a 3% raise. So our teachers should get 3% raises. We know we have to do our classified pay, which is $15. We know we have to do the differentiated priorities. We want to do the clinic. That's what I'm saying.
Well, see, this is-
I'm tired
But no,
of.
but see, Tucker, this is what we do. We always wait till you get down to the absolute, I'm talking about working on this all year. I'm not talking about waiting.
I've
till
worked on
budget
it for
time
3.5 years.
And then say, we're gonna have to cut something out of this. No, if we work on this all year long and put back, we don't have to spend every penny of money we have. We don't have to hire somebody every time we have to get extra money. We don't have to do that. And besides, I'm still worried that when all this extra money's gone, where we're gonna be.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still worried about that. And I know our schools need a lot of work, and this is what just frustrates me. I don't run my house budget like this, and I don't like running the school budget like this.
No, and I completely agree to that point. But when you're sinking, you got to do something. And I hear you can cut this, you can cut that, you need to cut this, you can cut that. I've not once on this board had someone, you need to cut this, or you need to cut central office, you need to cut this, them give me examples. I mean, we can talk about cutting budget to get there. Me and you've been on the same page. Every time we come up, we say we need to put more money into deferred maintenance, and it doesn't happen. But at some point, we have to make it happen.
Right.
But also, we can say we want to get $12 million extra a year from the state and from the county combined. Well, we can forego doing a 3% raise, and that's $6 million. I mean, if that's something we want to do, we can have that conversation. We cannot put our classified at $15 an hour. That's a conversation. But like I said, we're robbing one to pay the other, and that's what this county has been very good at for 25 years. Very good at it, and that's why we're in this position.
Well, I'm just looking at how much the school budget has gone up over the past few years. It has gone up tremendous amounts of money. And like I say, that's not just at budget time that we come up with raises for people. And I'm all for, like I say, I've always said the worker bees are the most underpaid people in this school system because, number one, we continue to give across-the-board raises, which does nothing but widen the gap, and I get beat up for that too, but it's just it's a mathematical fact. And there's lots of different ways that we can do things. And like I say, we just wait right here at budget time when we get down, it's time to vote on it. You're supposed to present it to but by the way, we don't have to present this budget to the county commission right now. We presented budgets in when? September, October before. And so we don't have to be done now. But like I say, we need to be working on this all year and not wait till crunch time right here at the last day to have these conversations. Every time that we vote on something on the budget to take extra money out of our general purpose fund, we need to say, would we rather do that or would we rather fix a school? Would we rather tighten up in the central office or would we rather fix a school? This is what we need to say, because I tell you what, when something happens over here at this central office, if there's a leak, if there's a bad piece of carpet, if there's a tile, you won't see one over there. They get it fixed. And I've always said that. Central office, they will not.
Ms.
They will
Thurman,
not let anything go
I've got to
to the central
respond to
office
that.
like we do our schools.
Yeah, I
And
can't.
I'm not, that's no reflection on you, Justin. I've been here a long time.
I understand, but I'd go walk through the building over there and look at the carpet. It's
Well, it must have been that
20-something
carpet
years
they just
old.
put down a few years ago because they've had new carpet over there.
No,
Some of it is.
the other building over there
Yeah.
had new flooring put down 5 years ago. The carpet in that main building has been there 20-something years.
Well, that's really not tit for tat. That's not.
Well, no, but
that's
I-
exactly
It's
what you
just
just
an
said.
overall thing. You would not
Do
want
we-
somebody
do
to
we
come
have
in
an
and see the
order?
central office in the shape some of our
I know.
schools are in.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Walker.
Hold on just a minute. Are you the chairman?
No,
I am.
We're asking the
No, I'm
chairman.
Caritza, and you're Rhonda, and you're
I
not
am.
my mama. Her name is
That's
Pat.
right. I
Miss-
know.
Miss-
Thanks.
I know.
Have a
Miss
seat.
Thurman, Miss
I
Jones.
know. No, I'm not going to be quiet.
Because
Miss
I'm
Thurman,
asking a
Miss
question
Jones.
because you out of control.
Ms. Thurman,
I'm
Ms.
not out of
Jones,
control.
Mr. Walker.
You just ask for the order. Other people got stuff to say.
So when we look at, am I on? So we're looking at $10 million each year that we would identify as this is for facilities. And kind of like maybe Rhonda referred to in the past, that they just said it'd be a handshake agreement and we didn't, then nobody honored that handshake. So this would be something we would see ongoing, work with Dr. Sharp, and everybody on our facilities. And we know each year we have this 10 million set aside for facilities. if I look at this, and I know we said this is proposed and not set in stone, obviously there's some high dollar items in here, and I couldn't help but notice that Central's not on there, all the high schools are on there, and again, I'm not opposed to waiting in line for anything, but, so we're looking at right at 40 million already proposed, so if we say yes to this, and again, if the county approves it, then we already got a kind of a 4-year plan, and again, I know things can change here or there, but just on the quick front end, we'd look at other big items coming in maybe 5 years later if somebody else got added to the list for a new gym or auditorium or things like that. You know, I said when I ran that I'd never ask the county for another dime because we can never go backwards. You know, we used the term the other day, the trajectory of what we're going to do with this school system. You know, at some point there's got to be, and I agree with Rhonda on there's things where can we go here, there in the past, but we're here today. And I think this is an opportunity, you know, for us to put something aside and be real about it and not wait 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years for a new Harrison Elementary. I know that's not what we're talking about here, but things that we have to keep talking about and put Band-Aids on, athletic fields or additions to schools. You know, I've always been pretty good at being at my word, but you know, I can get behind if it's the time to do it. Again, we know we're at the mercy of the county commission, but and I know things will come up as soon as we present it to them and ask them for this. But you know, if we commit to 10 million each year and it being for our facilities, and we know everybody can, you know, we've touched all corners of the county with this proposed budget, proposed projects, and if I know that we can get in line with some of the other high-end items in 4 or 5 years to add some things to it, what is the right time to do it other than, you know, today?
Ms. Jones.
I've only been on the board 8 years, so we did not do this. The one constant for 17, that could equal $17 million, it's only one board member on here that's been around that entire time. I just got here 8 years ago, and I feel like for the past 6 of those 8 years, I've been on the board with several of these other people who can attest to the fact that we've wanted to send budgets asking for money, and we've heard the same speech we heard today from board members telling us, no, don't go ask, and this is gonna sound really probably crazy, but don't go ask Big Brother, or let's not ask Daddy for more money in our allowance. And so we end up right back where we are. And like Tucker said, and like James said, we keep digging ourselves in a hole. Now, we keep digging ourselves in a hole because we are not asking. We keep sending this balanced budget back. Or we get this speech, we send our budget asking for money, and then they tell us to send them a balanced budget. So then we, in turn, send them a balanced budget. And I believe Dr. Sharp has been here for that, Dr. Robertson has been here for that, Dr. Drake has been here for that, Neely has been here for that. We've done it for years. So I don't like to be caught up in stuff and decisions I didn't make because I wasn't here. I've only been here for 8 years. So for the other 9 prior to that, I didn't have anything to do with that. But what I will say is, I don't run my home. My husband and I don't run our home in 2022 the way we did when we got married in 2016, because that was 6 years ago. We didn't run it in 2017 the way we did it in 2016 because it was a year ago. Things cost more. Life is different, families are different, student needs are different, educational needs are different, educational funding needs are different. So if I ran my house on the budget that I did the year I got married, my poor child will probably be hungry. Because chicken tenders don't cost today what they cost 6 years ago. We have heard this speech forever, and I feel like if you don't ask, you don't know what they're gonna say. I believe that you don't assume anything, because when you assume, you make up out of yourself. So I'm not gonna assume somebody's gonna tell me anything. I was raised closed mouths don't get fed. You ask, you let them tell you no. You ask for 10, they might give us 5. They might give us 3. They might give us 10, they might give us nothing, but we have to ask. The children of Hamilton County deserve for us to ask. I I really don't care what the adults of Hamilton County feel like, because I pay county taxes and city taxes, and my husband is a financial administrator. So would he like it if something went up? No, he's not. But we also have a 2-year-old that will soon walk into a building, and we want it to be safe for him. We don't want ceiling tiles falling on his head. We don't want him breathing asbestos and black mold. We don't want the homeless people living under the trailer he might be going to school in. It's just time out for us to be like, no. And I agree, we shouldn't wait until budget time, right? No, we shouldn't wait until budget time. But we're talking about the budget. So why not have the discussion? And it's not like we haven't talked about buildings falling apart, inadequate athletic fields. It's not inadequate teacher pay. I mean, it's not like we don't talk about this stuff all the time. We talk about it all the time. And I'm just gonna be perfectly honest, I would like to think, I'm not gonna assume, but I would like to think if I were in these individual shoes, that I probably wouldn't come to us and say, we need all of this. Because they don't wanna hear all of this. Because at the end of the day, when all of this is done today, they're gonna go home, they're gonna go to sleep, they're gonna get back, and they're gonna get back to grinding and to work. Because whether the building is nice and pretty or raggedy as I don't know what, they still gotta educate kids. We cannot get caught up in that stuff. So yeah, I second Tucker's motion because it don't hurt to ask. It does not hurt to ask. And now we're gonna have 11 county commissioners, 11 school board members, and I've been sitting on forums with people that say they believe in public education. I mean, some people are literally campaigning on the thing that we're sitting here debating about. They want to improve our buildings. They want to do this. So why not have the conversation? We can have it now, or we can keep letting children come stand before us and look more mature than us and asking. Because that's what's happening. Our kids these days, they sick of waiting on us. So I really don't care what the commissioner's gonna say. I mean, I got a whole new commissioner. He didn't agree for it 4 years ago, well, 8 years ago. He probably not gonna agree with it this time coming around. I really don't care. I'm still gonna ask for it because the children in District 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 deserve it. But to keep talking about what should have happened, that was in the past. That was true. 17 years ago, I was in college, so I know I wasn't making it. That was in the past. And if we talk about accountability here. You had a gentleman's agreement, whatever that meant. I'm a lady, so I don't do gentleman's agreements. And I believe that you get everything in writing. It's a contract. When you get something in writing, then you have a means of holding someone accountable. So if they decide to give it to us again, let's get it on paper and they hold us accountable. But all this back and forth about what happened when we weren't here, I'm sick of hearing it. I've heard it for 8 years. I want to do what's right for the kids I represent, for my child that will soon walk in the building, for my niece that's in the building now, and for every other child that's in Hamilton County Schools that deserves what is safe and healthy, aesthetically pleasing, for every teacher that has to walk into a building who doesn't have to buy their own fan or whatever sometimes they have to buy to make their rooms aesthetically pleasing or safe. I would like for these people to be able to write grants for stuff that's academic, not for buildings. And I don't want to be held accountable to a foundation all the time for something that we need in our system.
Mr. Perez.
I asked last time we talked about the budget, and I tried to begin my movement of talking about take-home pay. It becomes a question of what kind of county do we want to have? Do we want to be a county that sends, expects people to work for our children and go home with $380 every 2 weeks? That can be a decision we make. What we're finding is that's becoming harder to do every day. Behind me, the sign says, we want to be a county, it doesn't say that part, where all children thrive and experience a future without limits. So what does that mean? I feel somewhat blessed that I think I have a decent relationship. He can correct it tomorrow with my commissioner in District 2. I would say good, but I think I'd be afraid to say that and have Chip respond and correct me that way. And I know that our commissioner would care more than only 2 projects in District 2, which I see there. One being a road, and this is manipulated, by the way, so there's no surprise there, but one being a road and one being an athletic facility. I still have Thrasher Elementary. I don't know if we fixed the parking lot in the back, and a lot of, it's an old school and a lot of work that has to be done over there. Nolan just keeps growing, so I'm sure we're going to have a lot of expenses moving into the growth at Nolan. I have Red Bank Elementary. I mean, there's been discussion even about the playground because of the water that's coming in and some of the work that has to be done, but Nolan's also growing. I used to have, or still have, but won't have as of August, Red Bank High School that I hate to use these terms because it sounds very sarcastic, but thank goodness for COVID that we could get some windows replaced, right? But had it not been for a pandemic, we would have windows that are broken down. A lot of work that needs to be done over there. Rivermont, little tiny school, I've spoken before that the problem with our trying to consolidate rule is that we leave some schools abandoned until we can consolidate, and it doesn't ever seem like we can consolidate schools. And so some of these schools, so for instance, the gym at Rivermont is a classroom the size of a normal classroom that's shared, and there's no real place for students in Rivermont to go. I have Alpine Crest, where one of the best second grade teachers on the planet works. So I won't go too much in there because there might be a conflict of interest, but I care a lot about that school. I cared about it before that teacher went to work there because it's the first school that I drove to when I decided to campaign, that I just went to look at and honestly touched my heart in the community that it's in and the impact it makes in that community. And District 6 will have many other schools that are involved. So the question I have is, again, what kind of county do we want? I know, and I actually think we probably all agree on this, that as a school board, we know what kind of county we want and what kind of schools we want. We talk about being the best in Tennessee, and I push us to think beyond that. My wife mentioned that one of my schools is in the top 6% of the United States right now, and we've got a few that fall in that. Hey, let's dream big, let's be the best in the country, and let's even hit those international scales. What kind of county do we want? I believe, this is my personal opinion as a board member, that my role as a board member is to ask for what I believe we need for our students. I don't decide anything about the money. I don't decide on a tax increase. I don't decide where the money will come from, how it will come from, where it'll be a bond or not a bond. That's not my decision as a board. But my decision is to say, in order for us to have a place where all children thrive and experience a future without limits, it is my belief that not only we have to compensate employees well and provide benefits that are not only competitive but that ensure to retain and recruit the best of the best, but we also have to invest in our facilities in a way that is proper. That's what I believe. It's been said already, we are at the mercy, of this I'm quoting, we're at the mercy of the county commission, or we don't know what the county commission will say. Absolutely. I have no clue whatsoever what the county commission will say or do. I propose a county that looks a certain way, not like the pictures that Mr. McClendon showed us. It is on the county commission to propose back whether or not they agree with that, or if we continue with a balanced budget. So when we've discussed the budget, and not even getting into this thing, I've sometimes asked, like, do we have like maybe it's 3 budgets, a dream if we could have everything we want, this is what we really think we at least need in order to make ends meet, and this is a balanced budget where we don't get it, and we decide as a board what we do. I do agree with Ms. Thurman. I don't like gotcha moments ever. I don't like them when they're done to people. I don't like them when they're done to us. But also in following sunshine laws, we aren't allowed to discuss things. So this is kind of gotcha to us. My issue, and I'll shut up soon. My issue is I don't believe $40 million really over 4 years really is anything. I really don't. We talked 2 years ago when I ran for office. They were throwing the number of $1 billion deferred budget, deferred maintenance budget. If that follows current inflation rates, $1 billion would be probably about $1.5 billion right now. In 10 years, if we kick the can down the road, it will be $5 billion. In 20 years, it'll be $10 billion. Who knows? I don't know the math of that well enough. And so I only would object to going to our county commission. You know, we do not, I put this is like the opposite of what this is intended to say, but you do not get because you do not ask. We certainly will not get what we don't ask for. I guarantee that. As much as people want to campaign on promises of serving and supporting our public education, we will not get what we don't ask for. And so for me, I'll wait for people's vote. I wish we were asking for much more than $10 million a year, because I don't think $10 million a year will get us as far as we think it'll get us. But if we're not asking for more than that, then I will go with the will of the board here. I just think we get this one shot. And by the way, I will suggest that as a board member, most likely, in at least the 2 years that I have left, the 2 votes that I have left, if the Lord wills me that long of a life, I will probably come back and suggest the same thing. Let's ask for what we need in order for all our students to thrive and experience a future without limits. And the county can push back and say, no, we're not going to give you that. And we move on with our balanced budget. So anyways, that's my voice.
Ms. Thurman.
Yes, at one time, there was, we talked about this, has been years ago, about turning our maintenance over to the county. Let the county deal with this, and that way we don't have to. That way they come up with the money. Just turn the buildings and maintenance over to the county. That way they get to decide what schools and that need maintenance, they can look at them as a whole and work on them. There was talk about doing that at one time, and I'm not too sure, because we always get in this situation here. That way it would come out of their budget. Of course, they would deduct what they usually give us. They would deduct this, whatever, our maintenance budget. But I'm just wondering if that might be the answer, to turn it over to them and let them do it. I don't know what that would look like, but that's a discussion.
Reaction to that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
the fear that we would have.
well, I mean, I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. It's,
No, I
it's
think-
something that we can consider, because at one time, you know, they took care of everything, even the finances and everything. And so I'm just, you know, if we can't seem to be able to get enough money to fix the buildings, you know, things have just changed a lot. At one time, the school system used to build schools out of our fund balance. We did that for years. Save up enough money in fund balance and build a school. Save enough money in fund balance and build a school. We did that for a long time. You know, things change over time. It might be something that we might want to consider, talk to whoever the new mayor is going to be, and see what that looks like. I don't know, but that's something else that could be on the table.
Any other conversation? Dr. Wingate.
Yeah, thank you. So just want to make a couple quick statements. One, I just want to I want to make it clear that just because the school board or the school system makes a request for funding to the county commission, that's not automatically a burden on the taxpayer.
Right.
That doesn't automatically equate to a tax increase. And that is a narrative that I've listened to for 6 years that bothers me, because the county can choose to fund whatever they want to fund, however they want to fund it. And does do that every year. As a matter of fact, in 2017, when the last time this board asked for additional, I'm sorry, 2019, additional funding, the sheriff that same year made multiple requests for additional funding, and all of those requests were granted. And hey, good for the sheriff's department. I don't begrudge the sheriff's department for being able to ask for more funding and make improvements. I mean, good for them. There was no tax increase involved in that. The county did what they had to do to move the funding to the sheriff's department. So just because either the school system, the administration, or the folks that sit on this board make a request of the county commission, that doesn't automatically mean that the headline the next day is school board wants a tax increase. That's number one. Also, I'll say that I don't know what took place for the last 25 years or however long it's been since the merger, longer than that, but I know in my time on this board, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm sure we could get them, but I feel pretty good about my ballpark figures. This board has approved somewhere between $35 and $50 million to go towards deferred maintenance. So the narrative that this school board has ignored that is not a true narrative. Now, it is accurate to say that those were one-time funds. Those were not budgeted dollars, and so I understand the frustration there. Could some of those funds been put aside as budgeted dollars, annual budgeted dollars? I don't know. I'm not on the front lines there looking at HVAC units and roofs and windows and all those things to determine what's really an emergency and what maybe could wait till it was budgeted for in an annual budget or an increased maintenance budget. I'm fully in support of a request for help with facilities, but I'm in support of that in a systematic, methodical approach that takes into account measured growth. I greatly appreciate the thoughts of, hey, if we don't ask, we don't get. I completely understand that, because I've been on this board long enough to understand county commission's not just going to go, hey, here's some money. And contrary to popular belief, they don't have an intimate knowledge of what's going on. I've been here long enough to know that too. They don't have an intimate knowledge of what's going on in their operations of the school system. Some pretend to. They do, yeah, and they purport to. And they have a hot mic 4 times a month when we only have it 1 time a month. But they're not as wise in those matters as they might think. But I would be in support of, again, a systematic, methodical approach to responsible growth that takes into account all those things that we're looking at here, and we're not going to get ahead of it. We're not. We're just not. There's going to have to be a drastic shift in the paradigm here about how we go about approaching our facilities for us to even come close to catching up with this. But in the meantime, a methodical, systematic approach to tackling these problems. And all we can do is show ourselves to be good stewards of what we have. And then I say this all the time, the school board doesn't lie. You keep stacking up wins. It doesn't matter what other people say. It doesn't matter what the rhetoric is. It doesn't matter how many times they talk more than you do. The proof is there that, hey, here's what we've dedicated year after year. Here's where we're trying to address issues that we see as most dire. And then it's okay to go, and we need some help. And just because we ask for help doesn't give, and again, they've got the mic. They can sit up there and go, oh, you guys are there. You always ask for money. You want a tax increase. Nobody said anything about a tax increase. Just asking for help with facilities. And if we can't get it there, then, we'll do what we have to do to try to make it work on our own. But I won't support this just because, even as chair, I used to struggle with, getting, and I'm not going to use the word surprise. It's not surprise, but just I don't appreciate kind of the last second, hey, let's throw this on top of it before we send it over there. While I do appreciate the intent, absolutely appreciate the intent, I'd rather see us, and again, hey, and Rhonda's right, they don't have to approve a county budget till September. Is that right, Mr. Bennett? Something like that, whatever the latest date is. I mean, hey, we can send this budget and then go, hey, I'm all about starting to put pressure on whoever we got to put pressure on to see about what we need to do to address some of these facility issues.
Mr. Smith.
Just very quick. I don't like the idea that I'm just hearing about this right now. And I might be more open to having this conversation had there been some conversation about it over the past several months. Timing, I hear what everybody's saying. Is there ever going to be a good time? I don't know, probably not. There hadn't been for 20 years. So I agree with that, but I'm encouraged. And here's why I'm encouraged. We're going to have a new county mayor for the first time in almost 2 decades now. We're going to have several new county commissioners. We're going to have some guys that's going to be up here with us, those that maybe remain. So I'm encouraged. But at a time when we're seeing unprecedented cost in terms of inflation, not just here locally, but in America. I'm so pleased that we were able to find these additional dollars to give our teachers a raise, our staff a raise, and what I'd pushed for from the very beginning. But I can't vote in approval of this tonight, not because I don't think it's needed, but it just seems like that, as we often do, things are just kind of thrown out there the last minute, and I just don't think that's the way to do business. So I won't be supporting this, and I will be supporting that we go to our commission with a balanced budget, and let's begin to have, with all these new folks, some real serious conversation about how we address our facilities needs. And it is a crisis. I agree with you, Chairman. But again, I'm encouraged with some of the things that I see happening. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Hill.
I have just so appreciated this conversation, you guys. This one has been a really difficult one for me. Joe Wingate, I really clicked my light when you made the point about how we don't necessarily have to do this tonight, but maybe we could do it later, because I feel similarly that this is a lot to take in. Like, as I look at these, I get a little hung up on, is that the right project? Is that, and that's not necessarily what this document means. But I could see, if I were a commissioner, I might feel the same, like, but wait, I don't know that I want to do XYZ project, for many different reasons. So I wonder, how might this body feel knowing that we've got some folks that are saying this is an interesting idea, but maybe the timing feels a little abrupt? Might we study this a little bit and consider also, if we were to ask for $10 million, to have it be, to have an adjustment, a cost of living adjustment, so to speak? Because it's really interesting that Rhonda brought up that 17 years ago, the county felt it appropriate to provide $4 million a year for maintenance. If you consider 17 years of inflation, we would easily be at $20 million annually were that to be tacked to the cost of things. And here we are working on $3 million. And I don't really think it's useful necessarily to anecdotally talk about, how we got away from that. If we had an in-depth history of the other budget tightening that was happening in those 17 years, that might be more useful. all that to say, I wonder how might you all feel about potentially, I mean, Tucker, if you want to vote on this, I'm good with that, but I don't know where the support is, but might we table this, sketch out a little bit more detail of what 4 years of $10 million might look like, put together some kind of ordinance related to this additional appropriation and an annual increase of, say, 1% or 5%, whatever's appropriate, that we could present to the county commission in a few months. Just an idea.
Say that last statement.
Yeah.
That if we, so perhaps, since we're uncomfortable about bringing it tonight, because it feels a little abrupt to many of us, might we table this $10 million idea this evening and do some additional work on that idea over, say, May, June, July, and provide an ordinance for the county commission to consider partway into August, so that we have something that we all feel good about. We're still working with the commission as it sits right now before they make a major transition. Just thinking out loud here.
My only question to that, and it would probably be for Scott, and probably the same thing that Dr. Robertson just asked. If we approve a budget tonight, the county commission can vote on a budget after a second read. And I think the last time they voted on a budget last year, I think I looked, it was like June 15th. I would prefer if we needed another week or two, something like that, to chew on this. But I'm not sure if the county commission is going to sit there and wait for us to make an ask of $10 million without it being.
Well, I would think of it as outside of the standard budget process. So it would be something that they go ahead, they move forward with whatever schedule they have, they set their budget based on, what we send and their decision on that. But then this is a different piece of business altogether for them to consider. That would be a standalone, because, I mean, in as much as we have seen growth from the county has even more money sitting, and they have assorted funding sources, and might be a great opportunity for some of the candidates to put their money where their mouth is on their way out the door. I'm truly brainstorming here.
Did you have something, Dr. Robertson?
Just some clarity around this list. This was solely used to show like projects that we could get done. It's not in no way meaning even in year one, but in consideration of like, could we plan out 4 years? The reality is we can't budget 4 years. You would you have to approve, a project in that year. So if we did get additional 10 million, we'd have to look at this list, work with the county commission, and say, here are the projects. I think what we were trying to do with this is...
Well, now, I would think of it as budgeted, like it would be after the budget, not tied to specific projects, but it would be a maintenance budget. And I mean, these are the kind of details you could work out in the ordinance language.
I think what we're trying to show here is, and you go back to that mayor's working group, right, and recommendations there. The reality is our facilities we can go out and get bonds. That's going to help big projects, but we're never going to get this down unless we have a multi-pronged approach to it. This is showing like if we can take care of our roofs, right? Those buildings that are 25 years old won't look like this in 5 years. If we can, go paint the buildings that are 10 years, if we can hit these little things from our end, then when we go back for a big bond request, we can replace the Soddy Daisy Middles or the Clifton Hills Elementary or those schools that are going to be, $35, $50 million. Scott, you can word that better than me about.
No, actually, I think you put it very succinctly. When you're talking about multi-year projects, you have to budget for those in each given year. And I understand what you're saying is it's not part of
but I think what Dr. Robertson said of example,
right.
We would paint buildings when they're 10 years old. That would be an example of here's a standard that Hamilton County Schools would like to set with relation to maintenance of buildings, because we have a brand new elementary school, and if if we can't maintain that roof, then we're right back where we started.
And perhaps to Ms. Hill's point about this being something after the budget process, I mean, it would be fundamentally an amended budget, but something maybe after this budget process. I would point out that while you don't have to have a budget in place until September 1, if you don't have one in place by July 1, we go into a continuation budget, which means that the monies that were appropriated last year continue to this year, and that may actually impede some of the progress that the administration wants to consider as it starts the next school year. So if
Yeah,
things-
pushing the entire budget back is not, it doesn't feel like strong leadership at this point, and that's
to your
certainly not what
point,
this
my-
board is about.
So, and that was the point I was trying to say to Ms. Hill's point, that if you want to look at this, I wouldn't hold up the entire budget at this point. I would go ahead and maybe do whatever the board's pleasure it is to do, and then maybe look at a specific capital maintenance issue at some point down the road, unless there are 5 votes to do the whole thing tonight.
That's right.
Pleasure of the board.
There may be.
You know, I think great points, and I think the most important point Dr. Wingate made, I'm just going to keep saying Dr. Wingate, is it doesn't necessarily mean a tax increase. The county general government, Mary Ellen, you might be able to help me with this, you might not know this, I believe last year put $20 million in their fund balance, and then I think this year they're probably around the same again this year.
Can't confirm that, but.
I think it's somewhere around, it's a lot of money they do. One thing this administration, our prior administration have done is we've gotten a little more aggressive with our totals, and then we also mid-year kind of true up. We were able to do the pre-pandemic 2%. You know, it doesn't mean a tax increase, and that's one thing I'm sure that will be headlines tomorrow is Tucker McClendon proposes tax increase, and that's just not true. I'm asking for $10 million from the county commission, and they can see however they want to fund it. That's not my decision, that's theirs. As far as timing, you know, does it matter if we wait 2 months? In the grand scheme of things, no. But I think one thing that I get very impatient, as Ms. Robinson said, I'm not a patient person either, is things get lost in vortexes, things move on, pandemics happen, a lot of things happen, it's a moving system. And if the time's right in 2 months, the time is right now. You know, anyone on that commission that wants to say they don't support this while we also do this, I don't have words for you. But, you know, it's time that we stop kicking the can down the road. And if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. I can't say I didn't try. But we've got to make progress. And one thing I just don't want us to do is to get into the vortex of government as a whole, and we're, you know, all this stuff, and, you know, I just, it's the right thing to do. And ever since I've been elected 4 years ago, I haven't done what's the popular thing, what's the most conservative thing, what's the most whatever thing you want to say. I've done the right thing. And I lay my head down every day knowing that. And I'll roll off this board on September 1st knowing that I did that every night. But this is a hill I'm willing to die on for these next 3 months. And anyone that wants to come with me, they're more than welcome. And if you don't, I understand. But it's the right thing to do. This has been far too long. I mean, we can't keep saying we want to do this and that and only having to pick one. And that's what we've done. We've been able to invest in our teachers, and we have to keep doing that to be competitive. There's one thing in this district that we've not invested in, and that's took the brunt of that. It's everything on this list and all the pictures we just saw. So I'll leave it at that. Ms. Jones, are you? Right. Mr. Smith, you're done?
Yes.
Can I?
Ms. Thurman, I was just trying to.
I just want to add one thing. I think that Jeannie made a lot of excellent points. I think that's the way to go about it, to have a separate discussion about that. I think we also need to bring the commission in and show them some of these pictures and some of these things, because they don't know this either. And to make our case, go and state our case, make our case, lay it out of how much money we made. They could give us more. I don't know, depending on if these schools are in their district, they may want them fixed, and they may be willing to give us even more. So, that's the way to go about it, instead of adding it onto the budget, I think, and go at it as a separate item, and meet with the commission and just make the case of the condition of some of our buildings. I think that's probably the best way to go about it.
Mr. Prez?
So just a question on procedure in this. If we were to vote the general budget, what process, what had been proposed before the 10 million, and we wanted to bring this to the commission during the summer for an extra vote, like I don't know the rules of anything like that. So would there be an extra amended request? Would it be?
Yeah.
That's
It would be an amended budget. Yes, sir.
Okay, and so we could vote the general budget today and come back in a month and request an amended budget. So here's the reason. Tucker, I think you're a phenomenal leader, and I actually hope down the road there's hills that I can join you and die on. I have trouble, I hope not, maybe. I have trouble dying on a $10 million hill. I really do, because a $10 million hill, when I look at just my cost of my district closed down, goes pretty quick, and I know that every district's going to say, okay, that's great, I want mine first, and then let's move on. And it's like the 5 minutes, as I say, people in their 5 minutes feel it went like that, even though for us it feels it's a lot. So I probably, if that's possible, I want to make sure that I understand if it's possible for us to have a discussion. And again, because I look at that $40 million, that's what I want to propose, but not for every year maybe. And the commission can say no, and we move on. So that's kind of how I feel. I'll be more glad to die on a $40 million hill than I am on a $10 million one that will take care of a few projects here and there, and not more than that. So, but I mean, we got to vote. So,
Any other discussion?
Who's dying? You just asking for money?
yeah.
Well, I only got 3 months left, so this is the only hill I got left. Yeah,
Are we voting on the?
we have my motion. We have my substitute motion.
Amendment.
That's what we're voting on first.
It's an
Amendment.
amendment.
My substitute amendment, or no, my
Your amended motion.
Amended motion.
amended motion with a second from Ms. Jones. Ms. Robinson.
I'd like to table the amendment and the discussion to a later date. So I don't know, do I need to make a second motion?
I think we got to vote on it.
We have to.
You do have to go ahead and vote on it.
Well, so if you've moved
So we
to
gotta let
amend.
it die.
I can vote to table it.
If she's moved to table the amendment, if that's a second, then that takes priority, and so we vote on that.
Okay, so there needs to be a second.
I will say, just because I got 3 months left and I really, at this point, don't care. I tried to propose a $500 bonus 2 months ago, and I was told to wait to budget season, and now I'm being told the opposite. But I just want to just put that out there, that this is budget season.
Well, we're taking care of the $500.
I know, but
We're doing better than that because we waited.
okay.
So there's a motion to table the proposed amendment. I don't have a second.
You got one now.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're voting on to table the.
Yes, sir.
Amendment.
Yeah.
The amendment.
Okay, the proposed amendment. Okay, Mrs. Hill,
Yes to table.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Perez,
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mrs. Sermon,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Dr. Wingate,
Yes.
Chairman McClendon.
No. Okay, now we have to vote on the.
Current budget.
On Ms. Hill's
That's the first
proposal to approve the budget set forth in the update.
Any discussion on that? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Perez?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mrs. Thurman?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Dr. Wingate?
Yes.
Chairman McClendon?
No. Ms. Jones?
So in voting to table, are we voting to table to, are we voting to table to give them time to come up with a better list for what we're gonna ask? Are we voting to table because we're gonna have a meeting with, like, what's our next step when we table?
In this
Ms.
case,
Hill.
it's just tabled. In this case, it's,
So the can rolling on down the road?
Well, I'd like to ask,
That's what I'm trying to get to, like. are
I'd
we-
like to ask that Chairman McClendon and Justin work on some more specific ordinance language for us that would relate to $10 million with some kind of additional, some kind of growth expectation. And then perhaps a more general, here's the maintenance that would be covered. Like, I think about, at my house, I have clean the gutters every 6 months, you know? And
I will say, we'd have to, Mr. Bennett, we can't put just trying to think through the cost of living percentage, like it increases 1% a year or whatever else, because that's not our money.
well, but we could we could put it in a sample ordinance for them and they can vote on it. They can do that.
Yeah, they could do it, but I don't know if it does any for that part of it. It would be, I think a commissioner would have to carry that because we can't.
Yeah, we'd have to
Right.
think about that.
We
And maybe we
can't.
get a commissioner to carry this.
Yeah, I
forward.
mean, but that's what I just don't want to get hung up on is, I don't think it's
40 million.
for us to say we want to pass $10 million plus we want a 1% cost of living because
Right.
that's getting into their budgetary stuff.
Yeah.
We can just make an ask, I think next year it's, if that's the case, we make an ask saying, we want $500,000 or we start budgeting $500,000 out of our money to put towards that. That's how it would have to be done, I think. We can only make, I think, one ask for this budget. We can't make any long-term ask of them because this is only pertaining to this budget. Now,
No, but it wouldn't, no, if we move forward with this, just like, I guess sometimes I think about piles of money, right? So this is all the general county pile of money, the education budget, the sheriff's budget, everybody's budget's in this one big budget. But what we want to do is come up with something that's extra budget, it's not a one-time expense. It would be a request for an annual maintenance allotment. That wouldn't have anything, like, they can do what they want. They can choose to add that in later if they want to. So, and I'm happy to have some conversations with Justin about kind of brainstorming that. But I don't want to volunteer to carry that because you're our maintenance guy, and I agree you're a great leader, and I appreciate all that you've brought to this board.
Thank you. Okay, that will adjourn our special called meeting. We will go into our agenda session. Do y'all want a 2-minute break? Or keep
Yes.
going? 2-minute break?
You need to take just a few minutes break to give Chad time to.
Yes, 2 minutes just for our live stream. Thanks.